These lizards have done us no harm. They don't
If you grew up in the 80s, which I believe is the golden era of cartoons, you've witnessed some of the classics that are popular even now. Today we're diving deep into one of the most beloved cartoons from the 1980s, Thundercats. Now, while the concept of the show might sound innocent enough, the series actually came with a lot of dark secrets and behind-the-scenes stories that will blow your mind. What I'm about to share with you in this video might completely change how you see this classic series, because we're exploring 10 dark and adult facts that were hiding in plain sight throughout Thundercats. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The uncomfortable truth about Liono's body. Let's start with something that's honestly pretty disturbing when you really think about it. Liono, our heroic leader of the Thundercats, has one of the most uncomfortable character concepts in cartoon history. When Thundera was destroyed and the Thundercats fled in their spaceship, Liono was just 12 or 13 years old, literally a child. But here's where things get really weird. His suspension capsule malfunctioned during their journey to Third Earth, causing his body to age physically into full adulthood, while his mind remained that of a young boy. Think about the implications of this for a second. We're watching a cartoon where the main character is essentially a child trapped in an adult man's body, forced to make life or death decisions and lead an entire civilization. He has to navigate romantic situations, command warriors in battle, and face psychological manipulation from villains, all while having the emotional maturity of a middle schooler. The show tried to address this by showing Liono gradually maturing throughout the series, but that doesn't change the fact that we're essentially watching a kid deal with incredibly adult situations while looking like a grown man. It's a concept that would never fly in today's animation landscape, and honestly, it adds a really dark layer to every decision Liono makes throughout the series. The series opened with full frontal nudity. The very first episode of Thundercats, Exodus, featured something absolutely shocking for a Saturday morning cartoon: full frontal nudity. When the Thundercats awakened from their suspension capsules on Third Earth, they were completely naked. Panthro, Tigra, Chitara, Wily Kid, and Wily Cat all rose from their pods without a single stitch of clothing. Surviving production cells from that introductory sequence confirms that it wasn't an animation error. It was completely deliberate. Now, the benevolent spirit Jaga quickly swooped in to present them with armor and robes moments later, so it didn't last long on screen. But the fact that this happened at all is absolutely wild for a show marketed to children. The animators weren't creating erotic content, but they were threading the narrative with what older viewers could recognize as a subtle undercurrent of mature themes. Combined with Liono's situation of being a child in an adult body, these nude scenes take on an even more unsettling dimension. Many fans who grew up watching the show later admitted to feeling an unnameable discomfort during these scenes, even if they couldn't articulate why at the time. It was a bold move that shattered Saturday morning animation conventions and injected adult teen shock into what was supposed to be a family entertainment. Drug addiction episodes that weren't subtle. The 1980s were infamous for their anti-drug PSAs, and the Thundercats definitely got in on that action. But they took it to some surprisingly dark places. In the episode The Garden of Delights, Tiger discovers an underground garden filled with psychedelic fruit that gives him intense hallucinations. A character named Silky offers him this fruit, and after eating it, Tiger experiences visions of flying and becomes completely addicted to the substance. The episode doesn't shy away from showing the effects of his addiction. He becomes aggressive, challenges Liono's authority, and completely neglects eating regular food. But here's where it gets even darker. Mum Ra uses Tigra's addiction to manipulate him into stealing the Eye of Thundera. We literally watch a beloved hero become a slave to his substance abuse and betray his friends because of it. And this wasn't even Tigra's only drug episode. In Crystal Canyon, he gets addicted to a green crystal that functions like crystal meth, giving him bursts of energy while slowly destroying him. The episode shows him in full withdrawal, trembling and desperate for his next fix. For a kid's show, Thundercats pulled no punches in depicting the ugly reality of addiction, complete with betrayal, withdrawal symptoms, and the complete degradation of a hero's moral compass. Slavery was a recurring theme. Here's some of what always struck me as incredibly dark when rewatching Thundercats as an adult. Slavery is everywhere in this show, and it's treated almost casually. In just the 4th episode, The Slaves of Castle Plundar, we discover the mutants have enslaved an entire race called the Brute Men to build their fortress through forced labor. These beings are worked to exhaustion with no rights or freedom whatsoever. But it doesn't stop there. The 2011 reboot took these themes even further. There's an entire episode about the Burbles, small robot bears who are captured by a slave trader who values their technical skills. We literally watch cute robot bears being kidnapped and sold into slavery. And in the comics, particularly the controversial Thundercats The Return series from the 2000s, slavery becomes even more disturbing. The heroes themselves are depicted as slaves to Mum Ra, with Panthro forced into mine labor and the other Thundercats scattered in various states of captivity. The fact that a show marketed to children so consistently featured enslaved populations and forced labor is pretty shocking when you really examine it. The controversial 2003 comic sexualized child characters. The 2003 comic miniseries Thundercats: The Return took things into territory that shocked and disgusted fans. The comic depicted Wily Kid and Wily Cat, characters who were children in the original series, as Mum-Ra's personal slaves and concubines. Let me repeat that. The comic sexualized characters that audiences knew and loved as children. The series opened with a scantily clad Wily Kid bathing a naked Mum-Ra, with the comic explicitly referring to her as his concubine. Multiple scenes show her being serviced to Mum-Ra in ways that were beyond inappropriate. Even though these characters were technically aged up by 5 years in this timeline, fans quickly calculated that they would still have been underage minors when you did the math. The series also heavily implied that Chitara had been repeatedly raped by Mum-Ra's mutant henchmen over the 3 years of captivity. She's shown chained to a pillar in torn clothing, while Mum-Ra coldly remarks about what those slovenly mutants have been doing to her. This transformation of beloved childhood heroes into sexual objects and victims of abuse was so jarring that many fans declared their childhood had been ruined, and the comic book became one of the most reviled revivals of that era. Death and violence were more explicit than you remember. When I went back and rewatched Thundercats recently, I was struck by just how violent some episodes actually were. Sure, most episodes featured the typical cartoon violence where nobody really gets hurt, but there were moments that went way beyond that. In Thundercats: The Return comics, we see Bengali's bones left on display in the team's former headquarters as a gruesome warning to potential rebels. That's right, the skeletal remains of a beloved character used as decoration. The 2011 reboot didn't pull punches either. In the premiere episode, we witnessed the genocide of the Thunderian people, with King Claudius murdered by Mum-Ra right in front of his son. The violence is brutal and unflinching. Liono literally has to watch his father die, and the show doesn't shy away from the psychological trauma this causes. In various episodes throughout the original series and reboot, we see characters breaking necks, impaling enemies, and engaging in combat that would be considered intense by even today's standards. In Thundercats: The Return, Liono goes on an actual killing spree, snapping mutant necks and leading a slave uprising that results in mass casualties. And let's not forget the episode The Last Day, which featured apocalyptic destruction so intense that many fans believe it could have been banned for being too dark for a Saturday morning show. Mum-Ra's transformation is body horror. Let's talk about Mum-Ra for a second, because his transformation sequence is legitimately nightmare fuel. We're introduced to Mum-Ra as this withered, decayed corpse wrapped in bandages, essentially a walking mummy with rotting flesh barely clinging to bones. But when he invokes the ancient spirits of evil with his famous incantation, we witness one of the most disturbing transformation sequences in cartoon history. His decayed body suddenly expands and grows nearly 5 feet tall, muscles bulging and exploding through his withered form. Skin stretches and reforms as he transforms from a shambling corpse into a muscular warrior. The transformation is visceral and unsettling. You can practically hear bones cracking and flesh tearing as his body contorts. And here's the real dark part. Mum-Ra is absolutely terrified of his own reflection. His greatest weakness is seeing his own face because his transformed appearance is so horrifying that even he can't bear to look at it. Think about that for a moment. Our main villain is literally so monstrous that he frightens himself. This adds a tragic, almost sympathetic dimension to his character, suggesting that his transformation into Mum-Ra, the ever-living, might be more of a curse than a blessing. The body horror implications of repeatedly transforming between a corpse and a muscular form, never being able to escape the decay, is genuinely dark stuff for what's supposed to be a kid's show. Psychological manipulation and mind control were constant threats. One aspect of Thundercats that really hits different when you're an adult is just how much psychological warfare and mind control happens throughout the series. Mum-Ra is a master manipulator who excels at corrupting heroes and breaking their minds. In the 2011 reboot, we see him manipulate Groon's ambition and paranoia to make him betray his best friend Panthro and all of Thundera. He used Groon's feelings of inadequacy and desire for power to turn him into a traitor who helped orchestrate genocide. But it gets even more disturbing with Myra's storyline. Mum-Ra found her dying after the fall of Thundera and used her hatred of Liono, whom she blamed for supposedly abandoning her, to manipulate her into becoming his spy. He didn't just recruit her, he psychologically groomed a traumatized dying woman into betraying the man she once loved. The show depicts her toying with Liono's emotions, making him fall for her, only to reveal it was all an act to serve Mum-Ra. That's some seriously dark emotional manipulation. Then there's the episode Psych Out, where the lunatic Aluro uses a powerful talisman to strip the Thundercats of all their self-confidence, leaving them hopeless, confused, and unable to function. Watching beloved heroes reduced to broken shells of themselves through psychological torture is genuinely unsettling. The series tackled genocide and colonialism. Thundercats is fundamentally a story about genocide, colonialism, and the sins of imperialism. The series opens with the complete destruction of Thundera, the Thundercats' home planet. We're watching a cartoon about genocide survivors fleeing their annihilated world. Every single Thundercat is a refugee who watched their civilization burn. But the recent Dynamite comic series reveals something even darker about Thundera's history. It turns out that Third Earth, the planet where the Thundercats settle, was actually a penal colony where Thundera banished its worst criminals for countless years. Think about that. The heroes of our story come from an empire that used Third Earth as a dumping ground for undesirables. The comic also reveals that Thunderian forces committed numerous war atrocities, including kidnapping Slythe's family and making him believe they were dead, which drove him to seek revenge. Suddenly, the mutants' hatred for the Thundercats makes a lot more sense. They're not just evil for evil's sake, they're fighting against colonizers who have a dark history of oppression. The show presents a much more nuanced picture of colonialism than you'd expect from a Saturday morning cartoon, showing that the Thundercats' arrival on Third Earth is essentially a continuation of Thundera's imperialist legacy. The final episode featured genuine apocalyptic horror. Let me tell you about The Last Day, an episode that still gives fans chills decades later. This wasn't your typical Thundercats episode, where everything wraps up nicely. The ancient spirits of evil give Mum-Ra an ultimatum: destroy the Thundercats by sundown, or be banished forever. To accomplish this, Mum-Ra grows to about 60 times his normal size, and begins causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions all over Third Earth. The episode opens with the Thundercats calculating that the entire planet will be destroyed in less than 12 hours. We're talking complete planetary annihilation. Every living being on Third Earth is facing extinction. Mum-Ra systematically hunts down and captures each Thundercat, banishing them into a spectral realm while entombing Liono underground. Then, in what might be the most intense scene in the entire series, Mum-Ra destroys the Tower of Omens and storms Cat's Lair itself. The sanctuaries where the Thundercats felt safe are violated and torn apart with bare hands. Mum-Ra circles Liono's stone prison slowly, dragging his claws over the surface with a screech like nails on a chalkboard, whispering promises of torment in an almost intimate, psychologically torturous way. The episode ends on a cliffhanger with the sun setting and Liono still trapped, making audiences genuinely believe this might be the end. The apocalyptic stakes, combined with Mum-Ra's most brutal and sadistic behavior, made The Last Day feel more like psychological horror than children's entertainment. Marvelous Verdict, a cult classic with some dark secrets. These dark and adult facts about Thundercats prove that this wasn't just another innocent cartoon from the 1980s. From child protagonists in adult bodies to full frontal nudity, drug addiction, slavery, sexualization of minors in comics, explicit violence, body horror, psychological manipulation, colonial guilt, and genuine apocalyptic terror, Thundercats pushed boundaries in ways that most Saturday morning cartoons wouldn't dare. Looking back at the series now, it's clear that the creators were threading mature themes throughout the show that flew right over the kids' heads, but registered with adult viewers. Whether intentional or not, Thundercats ended up being one of the most complex and darkest animated series of its era, dealing with heavy subject matter under the guise of heroic fantasy adventures. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark side of Thundercats, make sure to hit that button and subscribe for more content exploring the hidden depths of your favorite childhood shows. Drop a comment below telling me which of these facts shocked you the most, or if there are other dark elements from the Thundercats that I missed. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.